All right, well, it's a little bit after 7, so I guess we'll officially come to order. And first item is to review and approve the minutes. Seal on the minutes, the official paper copy here that wasn't noted who was appointed where. So, I guess any approval will be contingent upon those links being filled in. For the record, Mike was first Mike, and Chip Jones in second. Hey, good evening, John Bill. How are you? Any other updates or corrections or otherwise clarifications on the minutes?
No, the minutes are well done.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes contingent on the update on official road. Include the elected chair and vice chair.
All right. So, motion to approve, pending the correction of the opinions in the minutes. Is there a second? I'll second. Thanks, John. Good. All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Okay. Yes. Open forum is the next thing here, with a small, pretty well-behaved, respectful crowd. I tend to not really enforce the, this is your one and only moment to speak. If anybody would like to speak, or has any questions for us to start us off, feel free.
Yeah, I just see you're in old business, you're gonna be talking about use of land preservation funds, to fund parks and recreation. I would say, I would definitely support doing that only if it's put forward as a referendum to the residents to vote on.
Okay.
Because that is not what the original referendum was using the votes for, so.
Anybody else have anything up front? Anybody ever join Zoom? All right, we'll keep moving right along. Financial review should be in our packet at the back here. We've got a little bit more information than we usually got here too. On our sheet for the financials, there's a line here, Susan L. Springsteen withdrew. There's a line a little bit, but, telephone
That's all.
Yeah, I'm used to the red light being you're on mute.
there we go. So the new owner of the Springsteen property is Leon Salzfuss, and I stopped by and visited him, spoke with his wife a little bit, dropped off some contact information for John Goodall and Jeff Shellington, and a little bit of high-level information about the program. He was interested changed a couple voicemails, and, yeah, I'm not sure if you've gone anywhere from there. All right. Yeah, not a whole lot of activity other than that.
Shane, is it possible for any residents who want to, be involved in reaching out to the community, can we do like a walkthrough with you and listen to you give your spiel about the land preservation?
Sure.
It would just be that I feel more comfortable,
Mhm.
helping if it would be possible to hear how you present it and.
Sure. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that in a bit. We've got outreach efforts on there. There's things, yeah, we've been doing, things that the Conservancy's doing or getting ready to do. And, we'll come back to that.
Shane, is this the latest financial
Should be.
as
Yeah.
of what they,
The date on here says January 9th, 2023. And I thought Christie mentioned in an email somewhere that it would be a newer version.
There was a budget that came out in the last supervisors meeting, and if you looked at the land preservation fund, it was really confusing, because I thought, last time I saw you guys had like 3.4 million, and then the budget that got sent out with the supervisors minutes said something like, it was like 900,000 or something, I don't know, it was a huge decrease. So,
That's probably what estimated to be added. I think that sounds about like per
was it
year.
added?
I think that's about what they expect to go into the fund every year.
It was just really difficult
That's
to
kind
follow.
of what the number, I thought there was like 4 point something in the fund last time. I mean,
It was hard to follow the budget.
budgets are,
Yeah. But there was a budget that got sent out at the last supervisors meeting minutes, and there was a number in there, it's just hard to figure out what it was. Maybe it is for something. It should be on their website with the agenda.
Yep. Yeah, there's a P&L form they gave us here too, profit and loss, budget versus actual revised.
We thought it was like 4.3.
yeah, I have the,
Okay.
allocated.
So that shows they're budgeted having 1.1 million coming in for the year and 310,000 and change collected so far. 28K in interest so far.
Now, they're not using the interest on that money for anything other than land preservation, right?
Not so far?
That's about.
No. And it looks like they did budget for 400K twice down there, doesn't it? Is that what you're getting out of that?
which one?
On the profit and loss sheet. This is the first time I've seen one of these, I'm sorting out what numbers are where.
Oh, it's on the back.
Yeah, there are two different
It's really hard. to read.
400K line items. And I'm not sure what those plans are. But they're projected to end the year with, it's about 5.3 million on hand. Ready to preserve a lot of stuff here, John.
Sorry?
We're ready to preserve a lot of stuff here.
Well, let's get to work.
Um, Any other discussion, questions, or notes on the financials?
Can we find out why there's $400,000 entries on this budget?
Well, that was supposed to happen last year, that $400,000.
But I thought it was, since they weren't going forward with this $5 million proposal for Humboldt Park, that they weren't taking $400,000 from the reservation.
Well, it was supposed to be put in last year, back to land preservation.
I don't think,
why it's appearing on this budget.
That's what I mean, that's what I'm saying, you know, why is it not only on there, but on there twice, and it's two different line items.
I think they approve it every year, but they have to actually do it. Did I read that right? And,
So there's still some discrepancy about that state statute that allowed them to take money from land preservation. So according to the township solicitor, she says they're able to take up to 25% of the land preservation money for parks and recreation. But when,
Can I stop here? Just a question that it's not clear to me, is that 25% of an annual intake or 25% of the total fund at any time? Did she clarify that?
she did. But my neighbor who's a lawyer looked at it and the wording seemed to be what he could interpret, that you could use it for parks obtained under the Land Preservation Act. So,
We'd have to buy it first. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so I don't think any, like Humboldt, that doesn't apply to Humboldt Park, it doesn't apply to any of the other parks that they were looking at. So that hasn't been clarified as to what my neighbor said is he thought it looked like they could put that money aside, which is what they've been doing, and they put it into this like kind of budget, like that they can't actually use it legally unless it's been acquired under the Land Preservation Act. So I think we need clarification on that.
no, it sounds, what I remember Beth saying was, it is kind of a gray area, but there's room to interpret it, is they can grab 25% annually and use that
Yeah.
for, whatever parks and recreation uses they see fit.
And the problem is, right now, there's a split on the board. I mean, John wants to defer to you guys and what you feel comfortable with, and feels as though the residents should vote on whether their money is going to get reallocated to something other than what it was originally acquired for. And it seemed like Tracy and Laura were on the other side. If they were legally allowed to take it for Parks and Rec, then they feel like they should be able to do that. So.
John might have some input to you.
I think what Shane said the operative word is it's gray area. The legislation can be interpreted two different ways. One is you interpret it, and one is the board's interpreted it. You want to get good solicitor advice on that, and be as prudent as you can. There's over half the townships in the county now have open space referendum funds, similar to Huntington Township. And to my knowledge, none of them have used the funds as they're being used in Honeybrook. It's not to say they can't, but up until now, they've chosen to, use the funds for, the intended purpose, or at least as the referendum for municipalities that I've worked with, for the purchase of development rights or the acquisition of land that can be used for parkland, as long as, the ordinance that's enacted in that township stipulates it's done. I haven't seen the ordinance in Honeybrook in a long time, so I don't know if it has acquisition for.
I couldn't even find it the other day.
So I would look to the ordinance as a direction on that. But again, the way that the state statute has it, you can use those 25% towards maintenance, but then it's very gray whether it has to be lands acquired with open space funds that were part of the referendum, or whether it could be used on lands that were acquired using municipal funds in general. I'm not an attorney. I just know that it's gray. I've heard both sides.
And the thing that really frustrates me is it seems as though our township is choosing to interpret that parks are open space. And they're not open space if you've developed them and put something in there, and they were previously grass and trees. And now you're building, you know, a tennis court or whatever. So,
Well, again, it's all how you define what that use is on that open space, where it really gets gray in a very behavioral lands when you use open space funds, and then let's say build a township living on it. Things of that nature, which have no sort of, tangential connection to the use of and enjoyment of the open space, whether it's for agricultural food or whether it's for exercise and scenic enjoyment. So, yeah, you're right. I wish I had an answer for you. I had an answer on the whole thing, agree with everyone.
It's the kind of thing, it's only ever going to get settled out in court, really. I mean, somebody's going to have to take their interpretation, act on it, and then, if somebody disagrees with that, they have to file suit or, present a legal challenge to it. And then
the problem is, I think it's turning the community against land preservation. You know what I mean? Because they feel as though it's the township's slush fund to do what they want with. And they're not seeing the benefit then of land preservation. So that's the negative, that's the downside of it.
Well, since we're here, should we talk about putting together some kind of official statement on where we stand as a committee on?
I think so, I do. And we can make a recommendation to the supervisors to give them some guidance as far as how they should approach the subject.
So, my question, do you know how much money at this point has been transferred out of land preservation?
None so far. It's been budgeted and thrown around for 3 or 4 years now.
But I feel like it looks like some has,
They put it in there, but they've never used it.
they put it in,
They put it in the budget, so you'll see $1 item in the budget, but they've never actually used it for anything.
so they've never transferred it out of
Yeah.
land preservation. So
Yep.
do you get like an annual breakdown of everything that's come out of that land preservation fund?
Yep.
And to this date, it's only, the only things coming out are land preservation payments.
So far, yeah. And the budget has shown it a couple of times. It's shown it as being approved.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Shane, and again, memory is only as good as what everybody remembers, so but what I remember is that it had to be stipulated as committed for the grants that they were acquiring. So, as part of the grant applications, they had to say that they had the match, whether it's 10% or 50 or whatever.
Something like that.
And so they would allocate those funds, put it in, that slice would be put somewhere within the budget to be guaranteed as that match. As I understand, they did get approval in some funds coming from the outside, but then they never exercised it. So,
Yeah.
I think that's how.
We did. Yeah, we did agree to it once, it was a singular transaction.
We did.
And that never, even that one never occurred. But, Any language or proposal for a motion? We've got some ideas thrown out there about, it's not the original, it's not following the original referendum.
There really isn't firm clarity on what this state law would allow us or prohibit us from doing.
If I could ask a question, because again, it sounds like you're talking to the community quite a bit. It's about the use of the funds for, jungle gyms, skate parks, that sort of thing. Is there any opposition for the use of funds for acquisition for park rent?
Yeah, I think the feeling is people wanted to be preserving land and keep it open, not be developing it in any way, shape, or form. That's just the people I've spoken to.
Okay.
But I think, I think everyone felt comfortable that I talked to with John's proposal of put it forward as a referendum and let the people decide, I mean, I'm just talking about a small snippet of the township, but
What if the parkland was not going to have things like tennis courts or ball fields? It was going to be green space and, maybe trails, but that's about as far as the development can go. Would that be an issue for people that you've talked to?
as long as it's not taking land away from a landowner, not taking a right away from a farmer or something like that.
No, I mean land that was on the open market, we purchased
Yeah.
for the purpose of having a very passive recreation, open spacey kind of place.
You know what the problem is? People are very afraid right now of having any of that until we get a police force in place. Because we've had issues with Humboldt Park with drug paraphernalia being found and illegal activities happening there without any type of control. So I think in general, people felt like police were the priority over parks at this point. So if we were going to use taxpayer money, that would be the preference.
But these funds can't be used for that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not, you can't go one or the other, it's just.
No, but there are proposals about potentially reducing some of the land preservation, earned income tax money so that there would be more money to fund that. So that's the competing priorities that are going on right now. No one wants to increase taxes, but, we need the police services now because we're having a lot of problems in the community with crime.
Sure, I can't speak to that. I can only speak to the program that we're here to discuss tonight, which is open space and the use of the funds that are delegated for land preservation. The question that I posed again, there's agricultural preservation, which this committee has done since the referendum was passed, but there's also, two ridge lines here. There's wetlands, there's stream corridors, there's beautiful areas for natural use and passive recreation. And the question again that I pose to you is, with those funds, would you see an opposition to those funds being used for those sort of capacities to afford places and spaces for the community to use in an acquisition?
Well, like I said, it's not a simple answer.
Yeah. The sense I've gotten is that there would be support for it if such an action were like taking something off the market that was being eyed up for development.
Yeah.
Like if we had enough money to go in right now and buy the property along 322 that's slated for 400 some houses, I can't see too many people in the township.
You wouldn't get it.
And those are the questions.
Yes, that's a good,
I think if we're gonna do that,
Yeah, if we can take this money and use it to pump the brakes on developments like that, then.
And that's where I asked everybody to kind of keep their mind open as to how the funds are used for, buying development rights where the landowner voluntarily sells the development rights, keeps that farm going, or keeps their natural area going with no public access, or there's an acquisition, because you know what, if you don't acquire it as a township, and you can ease it and then sell it, or you can have passive recreation there, it's what the funds are used so that you can be a player at the table
yeah,
as to what the land uses are in the future.
yeah.
These are the kind of options that are out on the table, but if you have just a very narrow viewpoint as to what the funds can be used for, you're gonna get what you're gonna get.
No, but that's a good point to bring to the public. I I see questions come up all the time on social media about land preservation, and they're all very negative, because people they don't see the map, you know, they don't see visually what it's been doing. They just know that they're getting money taken out of their pocket, and they see developments are coming up, and it doesn't seem to be doing anything to help them.
No, I understand.
So,
The
yeah.
people that are making comments on social media, how much effort are they making to learn about the
That's-
Or are they
Probably
just?
not a lot.
Exactly. So
Zero. And I-
they're criticizing something that they don't know
They don't
anything about, and they're not
understand.
making any effort to learn.
No, but in all due respect, I don't know that we're making enough of an effort to educate them either.
Yeah.
You know, and I've talked to Shane about this, like getting the electronic map, you know, being able to post that, being able to share with and educate them. Unfortunately, most people get their education off of social media anymore. People are into quick snippets of information, so it is about educating them. Because I didn't know how much this program had done before I saw that map. It just kind of hits you in the face when you see it.
Yeah, well, we're getting, learn them all now. That's-
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, Bath Township, Springbers, and Staples. So it sounds like we need some kind of a statement that is reflective of the idea that there was this original referendum, there was an intended kind of spirit of the agreement that was made between the taxpayers and the township, and that the uses of these funds need to be in following with that original agreement. And that while state laws may have changed, people's reasons for voting for the referendum have not changed, and their feelings on the matter haven't changed. And if it was a different intent, then it would not have had the same amount of support. So trying to put that in a written sense. Any other thoughts we should include?
I agree with what you said, and it's all up to the supervisors.
Yeah.
Everything comes down to how they feel about it, we'll do what we did,
Yeah.
but we can give them some guidance,
Mhm.
and we can make a statement.
Yep.
And the statement is that we do not support the change in the law, which allows for 25% of the funds going to anything other than open space. So we suggest the supervisors do not adopt in their thinking the change, the state law change.
So Shane, I would suggest something like, this committee supports 100% of funds being used for the acquisition of development rights and the acquisition of land on a voluntary basis for preservation. The funding for township will not see any funds being used for hard costs in parks and recreation.
And that would include interest, because that was also on the table, that instead of using the main money that was collected, that they could maybe use the interest that they were making off that. That was also an option.
I don't know if interest is a major portion of the funds, because interest rates, well, they're going up.
No.
But it's a small portion of the funds.
It's a surprisingly large amount of money.
What he said, I don't think anybody's getting that much interest.
We were looking at what we projected, the
Yeah,
interest to
5%,
be,
that's-
it was like insane, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. I think they see the fund, and now it's a state manipulated, that, oh, you can take 20, it's almost like they found a golden honey pot to, like, we're gonna manipulate this now, and we're gonna do whatever we want. which the taxpayers are looking at all the growth you have with no structural improvement here to protect the people.
Well, if the interest on the money is, what's the interest rate? 5%?
Probably.
Yeah, it's 5% roughly.
So, you know.
If you have a ton of money, you can get 5.
Yeah, if you get 5% on $4 million, whatever it is, I guess that would be a fair amount of money.
It is.
But in proportion, it's not really.
Yeah.
In proportion, it's not, you know, and you couldn't really do much with the interest, maybe. But the interest should be rolled back into the.
It should, it's still in preservation money, and you will know that or?
I know. Then I just wanted to put it out there that that was part of the discussion. I just wanted to make you aware.
It is. So I've got a draft here. The change in PA state law that allows for new uses of land preservation funds is not in alignment with the language of the original Honeybrook land preservation referendum. The Land Preservation Committee supports the continued usage of LPC funds only for the original intended uses of acquisition of development rights and voluntary acquisition of land to prevent development in the township.
Well stated.
Yeah, that's well stated.
Very good.
Well, in that case, we have a motion to add this to the minutes and basically state that to the supervisors.
Make a motion.
And second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, so backing up a little bit to F1. We have a proposal from Natural Lands Trust for preserving about 24 acres off Beaver Dam Road.
Yeah,
So
so,
the landowner is still very interested in this. He's been bugging John Goodall, who's been bugging me.
yeah, so it's moved over to not National Lands, but Brady Line House. It's, he keeps calling me on this issue. So, landowner Southerly, he and his father acquired 7 tax parcels along Beaver Dam Road, up in the woodlot there. They originally worked with Natural Lands, appraisal was done. It was presented to this committee back in 2019. As you recall back then, there were 2 major questions that the committee had. One was that, and this is my memory, so please, if there's other points, please bring them up, that the valuation seemed high. And then the second one was an access issue. The valuation back then in 2019, the appraiser came up with the value at $14,000 an acre at $329,000. The after easement value at $176,250, which means that the diminished value would have been at $152,750. What Jack had put together was the landowner was willing to do a 25% donation at $38,187.50. He was looking to the county, Brandywine Headwaters program, to pay another 25% into it, which would have been $38,187.50. And then, NL was soliciting the township at $76,375 to preserve that lot. The one thing that we have to remember is that because it's, although it's only 25.78 acres and 23 acres are going to be proposed for preservation, it did have the capability with the access issue off of Beaver Dam to have 7 lots, because there are 7 separate tax parcels. So they didn't have to go through a subdivision plan. They already had a by right plan because each of those tax parcels are separate. So the real issue was an access issue. So it's now come around to me, if the landowner is still very interested in doing it. What I would say is we've moved through COVID and time, values have risen. He's willing to take this value here. What I would propose to this committee, if they're interested in moving forward, is that if this value is acceptable, that it's under the stipulation that there's proved access. Now, the one lot that would be the access point would be across the son's land into those interior lots. And what the landowner has told me is that he's going to transfer the land over to the son. So either the transfer has to happen before the easement goes into place to ensure access, or there has to be some sort of right-of-way stipulated across the son's land to access back to ensure, the development could occur for the preservation to occur. Does that make sense? To ensure that the value is there, because the value is based on access. And this committee, and I think rightfully so, but then the appraisal didn't definitively show that there was access back there to create the value that the appraisal has. Questions?
Are you going to appraise it again, or you just get it appraised again? Or was that 2000?
Well, I would do two things. I would say, one, is the community interested at the values from 2019? And if so, then that would be the offer, again, stipulating that access has to be shown, that there's a way in to create this value. And then two, that you're accepting this value as long as the second appraisal is done, ensuring that there's no loss of value. You see what I mean? I would be very, very surprised. Land has only gone up over the last 4 years, so you can never guarantee that land value goes up. But I would have another appraisal, but I wouldn't, if it goes up, you don't want to pay more. So you say, look, you know what, we're, upon the 2019, we agree upon that value, we'll pay 50% of the 2019 appraisal. With the two conditions. One, that again, there is access proven that creates this value. And two, that there's a second appraisal done ensuring that there's been no loss of value since 2019. Does that make sense?
Can you explain why there has to be access?
Sure. So, the landowner picked up these lots over the last 100 years through their family. And they bought up this tax parcel and that tax parcel and this tax parcel. And what the appraisal is stating is that there is an assumption that each of those tax parcels could have a house on it. But they're not showing access back there for those 7 lots. So until they can show access to actually have buildable lots back there, even though it's owned by one landowner, it has 7 tax parcels. But if he went through a planning and condition process through the township to exercise that right, he may not have access to put 7 houses back
So
there.
it couldn't be developable.
Exactly.
It's not
So
worth near.
there's an assumption made by the appraiser, and this committee back in 2019, they did their homework, they read the appraisal, and they said, look, we're just suspect here because of the access issue. And so it was left on the table for Natural Lands to come back with proven access. And then the cascade happened. COVID came in, and everything kind of went asunder, and we all took to our families and our friends, and now we'll be visiting it. It's a very generous offer from the landowner at a 25% donation. But again, not only does this committee and the township like to see the money leveraged, where they're bringing outside sources, they love to see a landowner do a donation component, as long as that value is reflective of its true worth. Does that make sense? Sorry, you go down these rabbit holes on these
No,
things, so.
I think that's good.
Is there any other ground in that?
It's all what it.
Oh, would it? So they would have a hard time putting houses on there.
I'm sorry?
They would have a hard time putting houses in there either, right?
No.
We have the one existing house, there's actually 2 existing houses on the property already. There's one that's in the reception area, there's one that's not included that they own right along Beaver Dam. And that would be the same, that would, lead your way in on that existing lane there. I agree with you.
Carry that around for years.
Questions?
What's the zoning?
Firstly.
RC? So if there is woods there, then you would take the woods down in RC?
Yes.
So is that what RC, is that resource conservation?
So I don't know the zoning.
Yeah, it's resource conservation, and yes, you can build an RC.
Yeah, so you show a forest management plan, work with soil conservation for, an AD, and off you go.
You can't do high density, but you can do single family homes on those individual lots.
Now, depending on the slope and whatnot, I don't know how many houses, but he already has with 7 separate tax parcels. As long as there's an access, he has a buy right for 7 units, so we should, one house on each tax parcel.
Well, after what was done on that one trailer park, where there was 62 wooded acres, and the ordinance calls for no more than 25%, well, who cares what the ordinance says? We're gonna take 50. There's steep slopes in that property. I don't care what the ordinance says, we're gonna do it. So, my personal opinion is, we should jump on this.
So if the committee is so inclined, I would say those 2 stipulations, and then also a recommendation to the supervisors to pay for the second appraisal. The landowner paid for the first one, so to ensure the value is there, we're looking at $2,000 to pay for the appraisal to ensure that the value is less than in 2019.
Any other thoughts?
I think what you said, John, makes sense. This appraisal was done in 2019, and we're talking 4 years later here. I don't know how wooded acreage has changed over the past 4 years.
And we'll make sure of that in that second appraisal. I'm with you, I don't see how value would go down, but, you gotta cover your bases.
At the time, if I recall, my objection was the cost per acre would have exceeded what I thought it should be. It was up there with the prime soil acreage, and it's just wooded, but it's wooded. And it should be lower than prime soil.
And I remember that, and I agreed with you at the time. On reflection, the only thing I can come up with is that, again, since it's not a 25-acre parcel, but it's 7 parcels that create 25 acres, so that's what creates that land value.
The other thing, if I recall, that came into the equation was the administrative cost.
Yes. And that is not on the table at this point in time because it's brand new, not natural lands. So at this point in time, what the Conservancy is asking for is the cost of the development rights.
Is the natural lands out of that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the landowner's been calling me incessantly and calling natural lands, and I think I'm the one who's picked up the phone. And, again, you want to have landowners that really, really want to do these things, and he really, really wants to do this, and he's getting very long in the tooth, and he's just on the phone, a couple times a month to me, and it's a good project as long as there, is access and the value is consistent with the 2023 valuation.
So Brandywine is driving the boat.
No, Jack's away. Jack's not on this now.
Okay,
So
so I
it'll
feel
be me.
better. Because I thought before the administrative cost added too much to the cost of the per acre. Bottom
Yeah,
line.
so let's see, with the Brandywine Conservancy, we hold an easement, we put a proposal, all that sort of thing together, but, you have 2 levels here. One, you create the easement, which is a contractual obligation that runs with land in perpetuity. That's like hiring a lawyer, and that runs for us anywhere from about, if he has a survey and everything's getting tight, 10 to 15,000. But then we also have to hold that responsibility of ensuring that that document is upheld, that there's no development in perpetuity, and that runs about the same. Now, if I recall, when Jack was putting it forward, it was more like 40,000, not 30,000.
35,600.
35,000.
35,600.
There you go, and that was 4 years ago. It's also different because in the past, we generally work with the county's agricultural preservation program, and the amount of funds that they ask the township is less than 10,000, let's say, for administrative costs, because you split the survey costs and things of that nature. It's a very good deal. But this is an agricultural land, and so there is no county program to move this through. It would have to be held by a land trust, like natural lands, like Brandywine, like French and Pickering. And these are nonprofits that have, we don't have a tax base to go to, so it's got to come through each project. Now, what we would do is solicit another resource for those funds.
So it would be a 50/50?
I'm trying to get the cost of the easement and the endowment that we would need somewhere else. The only thing I'm asking at this point in time is for the 76,375, which is to go directly to the landowner to purchase his development rights.
What's the conscious percentage?
That would be 50% of the total.
50.
The total being 152,750 for that. The landowner's willing to give up 25% as a donation, and the Conservancy will solicit 25% from other entities.
So we'd only be paying $3,000, right?
That is correct. Exactly.
I think I certainly support having a new person on.
Yeah, the
$3,000
$3,000.
in township, but there's a big pickup at the end if everything goes okay for the township.
Plus, I think we've done a lot of work on ag land, and that's the bulk of the open land in the township, and an opportunity to do an easement on wooded land, I personally think would be wonderful.
Yeah, we're not pitting one against the other here. We have-
No, it's not a question of pitting, it's just, our focus has been largely agricultural land, and there haven't been a lot of opportunities to do wooded land, and here is one.
So let me ask, with the wooded land, do they have to keep the woods on there?
Yes, and we have to keep the woods there. So this would be the eco services that the woods provide, as well as the view shed, as well as no development. So, just as you look out the window to the right and to the left, you see your wood ridges. They're just as vulnerable to development, not as quickly as your agricultural lands, but again, for water resources and for carbon sequestration and all the eco services that the woodlands provide, it's just another area of focus.
So who monitors that to make sure that they don't take down woods
That would be the Conservancy's job.
once a year, you go in and look at it, or?
That's correct, we monitor once a year.
And what would you do if they did take the woods down?
But they'd be in violation of the easement, and then there would be consequences, and we take them to court. Hopefully, touch wood, that doesn't occur.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I know,
Yeah, so,
like, what,
so the way it works when you have, whether it's an agricultural easement or a conservation easement or a woodlot, it's a partnership with the landowner, and you educate the landowner as to the uses and the requirements of the restrictions. And so, the woodlot has to remain a woodlot in some regards, depending on how this landowner looks at it. It may only be allowed to be timbered with a timber management plan that's approved by the Conservancy. It may be that, only trails can be used and through it, and dead, damaged, disease. It's kind of two spectrums there. But on all cases, the body that holds the easement is the one that approves it. So instead of it just being enabled, like you were talking about with the trailer park, where they found a way to just do these things, there's a body there that enforces it. Touch wood, I've been at this a long time, are there violations with our easements? Yeah, it occurs, but the lion's shares are negotiated, and mitigated before it goes to a court of law.
Yeah.
It does happen that it goes to a court of law. Touch wood, the Conservancy and all of the land trusts in Chester County have been 99.9% successful in defending these easements and any sort of litigation that occurs by it. But nobody ever wants to get there. It's a partnership and it's an education, so we never get there. So the first landowner that donates this easement and puts that covenant in place, you're never going to see that problem because that's the philosophy that they incur. And then as the property moves on to the next generation owner and the next generation owner and the next, and so forth, that's where the Conservancy, the land trust, and the municipality is educating these new constituents about the responsibility, the sacrifices they're making so that we all can have this quality of life up here.
Yeah. So it gets sold to the next person that bought it, and now, I guess it's part of the deed.
It runs with the deed, a title search will show it, the bank's gonna be aware of it.
And you do a physical walkthrough every.
Yeah, so before the property is sold, we walk the property to ensure that it's in compliance. Every year we walk the property. That's through letters as well as conversations on the phone. Again, we want to never have the violations, so the education, cooperation, and communication is forefront to hopefully ensure that we don't have those issues. I'm not a man of conflict, so
Yeah.
hopefully by getting ahead of that, we don't have those issues.
You talked about logging with firewood, so could the homeowner cut firewood for his own use, or is there?
We put that in our easement, so we usually allow for, depending on what the landowner uses the wood for, it could be a couple cords, it could be up to 5 cords, something of that nature.
So they're,
You kind of want to keep it low enough that they're not turning it into a business, because we've had that situation, but high enough that they have personal use, they can use it. Who's it? Your neighbor, Patty, in her wood. She has the right to go in and take firewood out. Now, on that property, they don't take a tree down, it's all lighting. I mean, that's their personal philosophy, but they wanted the ability for someone to go in and take a couple cords a year. So it's an allowable resource.
yeah, there's plenty of trees that fall down and get blown over in a.
Yeah.
You got a couple acres, and plenty of trees blowing down, for sure it's ash.
Yeah, there's plenty of ash trees, unfortunately, we're seeing the extinction of ash in our region. I mean, it's a tragedy, but it's also a situation that it can be dangerous. It can create damage, and you should have the right to go in and ensure that your woodlawn is safe. So taking out those ash trees that have been damaged by the green ash borer, again, with the cooperation and the communication with the holding body, absolutely.
So the landowner could approach Brandon Line over and say, okay, is it okay if I take those dead trees down that are gonna fall down and hurt the good trees?
Absolutely, and there you're fine. Where there is problems is when you go out and there's several trees taken down that opens up this corridor that happens to come from their master bedroom, giving them this and they say, oh, well, they were all ash trees. Come on, team, we've all been there. So, sorry, I got on my soapbox there, I apologize.
Well, it seems like we've kind of hashed this out pretty well, and, since we kind of have an agreement here, so. I was just thinking about that, I'm thinking that I don't know where the switch is. Thank you. I turned on amongst the back of the room.
It's right when we came in. and it's
Yeah,
dark.
it's getting slightly darker. So what I've written down here as a proposal is there a motion to support the project at a cost not to exceed $76,375, plus the cost of an updated appraisal, provided that it is shown that the lots are accessible. Is that correct?
And that the appraised value is not less than 2019. Question to the committee, if it does get passed, it'll be cheaper if I use the same appraiser, or do you want me to use a different appraiser?
Any preference? I think it's okay with us.
Okay. It's just cheaper if they upgrade what they have already existing, so. And I know this appraiser, and he does work for us, he does work for others in the county as well as for the county themselves, but we just didn't know what it.
So if he was there 4 years ago, he's gonna make it quicker, or he knows, kind of knows what he's doing, or he's.
He's gonna have all the same maps.
Right,
He'll
the old
have-
paperwork, right.
Yeah, he'll have to look for different comparables, because again, they're only supposed to be so old, you know, the properties that have sold to give them value, but it'll just be cheaper, because he'll have to. it'll be-
Yeah, he had all information from 4 years.
Okay, so with the addition, the other statement, the appraised value of parentheses, has not decreased, can't be by the handwriting. Well, I'll take it up for it, there's a crit. It's you. I hear a motion. And a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. All right, the next, final thing is outreach efforts. So this year really kind of needs to be our year of outreach. We've got until August,
It's the first week in August.
the first week in August, to get applicants in. I believe we have an August meeting to go over whatever applicants we have. And, is it July? July. It's July 18th? Yeah. How do you wind up with that?
What's July 18th?
Our next meeting.
Yeah, I think we figured everything would be here in July. And wouldn't be here in August.
meeting before?
I remember we talked about, we're kind of following once per quarter. And then the next one after that, I think, is October,
Yes.
because we wanted to have it early enough that it wasn't following the wedding season. And we have a full complement for October. So that would mean we'd be doing the review for the applicants at our October meeting, I believe.
Yes, because you're not gonna know all the applicants that come
We're
in.
not going to know all July. We might have some by July though, right?
Can we move the meeting to August?
We can, yeah, I don't see why we couldn't.
Would that be an issue for anyone?
August. We'd be on vacation. Never know. What's vacation?
So Shane,
If we get 4 out of 5, or 3 out of 5, we can.
one thing I'd like to appeal to the township, as well as everyone in this room, as well as anybody watching, is that, you know, Conservancy and myself were available to talk to any landowner up here. The easiest door to walk through is one that's opened by the township, by the constituents up here. I just sent out 21 outreach letters with maps and everything to the best farms in the area in this township. If I get 1 or 2 responses, I'll be very happy with that. I mean, you know, you're looking at a 10% return on that. But if you all were to follow up, if there's any events where you have landowners that are going to be there, again, you know, however we can open the door to have the dialogue. It's something that we were really, really good at before COVID. There was many, many years that this township was #1 in applicants to the county's agricultural program, and that went by the wayside with COVID. And so any way that we can, you know, get things rolling again, but really the best way is for the constituents to support, promote, and talk to your neighbors.
Can you give the committee the list of the landowners that you've reached out to?
Absolutely, and I've given that list, Shane has that list.
Oh, I've got the ultimate list of
And that's what I went through.
everybody.
I think there's like 37 in there, and I went through and I picked up for I just went through and knowing what I know of your township and using the map, went after the largest of the largest contiguous, knowing that they're gonna be absolute shoe-in. There's some in there that are of the 37 that are important properties, but they've got a lot of woods, sort of a lot of wetlands, so they're not going to do too well in the agricultural preservation program. That's what this August deadline is. And so those are the properties that I sent those outreach letters to. But again, we all get plenty of mail and plenty of emails and plenty of spam, and to get someone to open something that isn't a bill or money is something that doesn't happen.
Well,
So,
that's what I told Shane, like, I think there's a number of community members that would be willing to help with the outreach, but, you know, we'd like to make sure we're saying the right things, and, you know.
yeah, no, and again, whether it's Brandywine or Natural Lands or the township themselves, the biggest tool, the best help that everyone can be is just getting that door open and then inviting us up. And you can, again, be a participant at the kitchen table, but, you know, letting myself and others that have been doing it for so long just sit there and discuss these opportunities. Again, there is, when you apply to these programs, there's no commitment by the landowner, the farmer, the family to do this. It's just to see if you're eligible to do it. It's part of the path. But if you don't take that step, you can't get to the finish line.
So that's really what you need help with, is encouraging people to just see if they're eligible first and start the dialogue.
And as everyone knows on this committee, and, you know, we don't just look at that. We look at other programs that are out there. There's 319, there's ag security, there's conservation. There's a myriad of different opportunities that a landowner may not be aware of that we review as part of this process, so that, you know, whatever happens when we leave that farm, they're going to be more equipped to make decisions. I mean, for many of us, our land is our biggest asset.
Yeah.
So, you know, I treat it as that, and that it's my farm for a moment in time, and how would I use the knowledge I have to make, you know, my money go further, my land go further, and perhaps do the ultimate, which is to sell those development rights, use those funds to draw down on debt or capital improvements, buy more land. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues, but again, the first step is just the education. I'm on my soapbox again, I'm so sorry. It's wearing out.
Did you send one to Helen, tree farm?
I'm sorry?
Did you send one to
You
the
don't
tree
need to,
farm?
I'm sitting right here.
For the tree farm?
I am.
For the daughter?
What's that?
Are you the daughter or what?
No, it's wife.
Great.
You know, yeah, we're not
Were you-
interested right now, but.
Were you here for the breakfast meeting too?
I was, yeah. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, that kind of to me is a question like, what is like the end game, I guess? You're never gonna get to 100%. Like, I think people just wanna know, like, we have all this money building, not a lot of applications coming in. Is there a number where we're like, $10 million, that would be enough? You know what I mean? Or is it $15 million, or is it, what is that amount that needs to be in that account for us to be like, we can dial back, we can get rid of it, so that it stops becoming an issue of like, how can we spend it? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of money sitting in there right now, and I can see why it's being
So
looked at as an opportunity to do other things, you know, and then,
what I would say from my perspective is to look at those back maps, and if you see where it started in 2006 and where we are today, there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and, you know, there's only 4 of us in this room tonight, and if any of the white areas were being developed, this place would be packed. There are townships that I work with that have these referendums that have over 70% preserved, and it's not a question of, you know, stopping, it's just a question of when the applicants stop. You know, if they were to get, if the constituents had their way, and I would argue in this township also, there's a quality of life here that, as long as it's done voluntarily and the landowner is willing, if we could keep it just like this snapshot right now, we'd all be pretty happy. But how do we get to there? And the question is when does it stop? And that's a question I can't say. I mean, that's up to.
I'm just
the
curious, I mean,
constituents.
if come August, we have, you know, hardly any, nobody applies. You know,
Yeah.
people are kind of like, you max out, I just wanna know like what that number, there has to be a number where we're like, okay, we've got, you know, 10 million in the account, and
Well, how much more is eligible? how much more acreage is eligible.
What are you looking for, properties over 25 acres, or your prime target, or?
So the way that, at least from the prioritization that we have done at the Conservancy, the way that we look at it is that it's not exclusively township money. And so we use the parameters of the grant programs that are out there to dictate eligibility, and that creates the prioritization. And so using the agricultural preservation program as an example, if you are adjacent to preserved land, you're eligible at 10 acres.
10 acres.
If you are not, you're 25. And so when we do our prioritization to see, you know, what farms are available for preservation in this township, those are the, you know, as far as acreage go, those are the parameters. But what's really interesting is when you're looking at the biggest ranking component in that program is your soil qualification. This township is just awash in prime agricultural soils. So the agricultural engine up here is just amazing because of the kind of soils you have. So not only is it important from, you know, a livability standpoint, there's also a responsibility of the community to keep this agricultural engine going and ensuring that it doesn't turn into the last crop, which would be development. And it's not to say that, I mean, we all live in houses, and it's not to say that there shouldn't be development, but, you know, when you're looking at just the natural resources you have for agricultural production up here, it's just really, really powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, we have heard from somebody, we have the tree farms, we have heard from somebody, and I can't tell you, just reaching out and see.
I haven't made that far east yet in my business.
I don't know if somebody's telling you they're reaching out, but we haven't been reached out to, and I'm not saying that it would, I mean, like I said, we're not interested, but,
Does this count?
Yeah,
Keep it
yeah,
10 bucks.
But, no, I'm just like, how many properties are left that are over 10 acres that are not, like, you know, like, there has to be a way to get to that number, you know?
You know, we did do the math on that in our last preservation plan update. That was, I think, 2018 or 19 or so. And looked at how much acreage there was left, was preservable, what that would cost to do at the average at that time. And then I think the average cost per acre at that time, the average amount of the township would contribute, and the average amount that we get from other sources. And then I think it looked like there, at that time, there was about $12 million worth of work that could still be done. And we had been asked to say, all right, you know, what is that trigger point at which, you know, we should start looking at reducing the tax? And that was, I think, either $4.5 or $5 million. If I recall correctly. I don't know.
So we're getting there to the point where we should be thinking about reducing the tax. And that's if you get everybody who's eligible to get on board, which.
So someone I know had reached out to, I think it was a Mennonite farmer near him, and the gentleman that he spoke to said that he thought that if he held on longer to his land and held out longer, that he'd get more money. So, you know, I think it's also important to explain to these landowners that this program isn't gonna be around forever.
Opportunity is perishable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, yeah, I mean, and depending upon what happens this year, next year, 5 years from now, any one of them could be the last year.
Yeah.
Well, it's also
We're
changed too.
hoping not. What's that?
It's also changed. I mean, so the appraised valuation for development rights on ag land, the highest I've seen, I've been at this game for now 25 years, was back in 2006, when we had that big boom throughout the county. And the reason is you gotta remember, is that you're separating your agricultural value from your development value, right? What a developer will pay and what a farmer will pay. And back in the mid-2000s, farm ground, because commodity prices were so low, was going for, what, 8 to 10, 12 tops? Yeah. Whereas development value was going 2022.
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is that commodity prices are doing pretty good for farm. So their value is like this. People are still developing, but it's like this. So now the gap is smaller for those development rates. So in actuality, today they're getting less for their development value than they were 12 years ago. Actually longer than that, 15 now. That's just the game. I mean, you can talk about that when you buy your house, you know, oh, we keep it for this many years and, you know, we'll sell it for 20, who knows? So, yeah, and money doesn't, if you can separate, tease away those development rights, you can use that money now, whether it's investment, again, draw down on debt or capital expenditures. That's money and power that you can use right now instead of waiting for tomorrow. So, these are choices.
On that 10 acres, you say 10 acres now, Jason, is that what the building is going to be?
It's a 2-acre curtilage that they asked for, so it's 12 acres technically. But we, in our analysis, would be 10 and let the county decide if they can't, they don't want. So the way that it works is that when you sell your development rights, you get a 2-acre out parcel around your residential structure because, and you can ask for a little more, a little bit less, but that's generally what it is. Because they don't want to buy those development rights on what's already been developed. Well, 10 acres is the minimum, and you're doing a 2-acre curtilage, now you're down to 8. So they like to see it at 12. Now, if it was a really good farm, a really good place, I would challenge it. And again, we're going after that program, but we can go along here. Where you can go and say, look, you know what, on this particular property, because where it's really, this is super important, you know, we're willing to put 75% down, you know, Randy, like, can you find the other 25%? There are other programs that I can find. I really like the agricultural preservation program. They do a fantastic job, but there's other programs out there. It would just mean that the township would have to put more of the asset down instead of it being matched or even less than a 50-50 match. And that's what you've always challenged me to do, is to bring in, you know, outside resources.
I know my brother-in-law, he has 18 acres around Cambridge River there, where that whole mill is. You get in there before there's a stone house right there on the bridge, and he's taking 3 acres out for his one employees, so it's down to 15 now after they got subdivided. And I ain't sure, I would have to ask him how much he would get in for his house or.
Yeah, so if he does, again, the barn doesn't have to be netted out, because that's agriculture. So look, it's like, the barn's way over here, and the house is way over there, you just do the net out around the house. It's just the residential structure that they.
You don't have very many trees there, he has got a farm ground.
So he has a lot of farm ground.
Yeah.
So another particular way that is that 50% of the ground has to be in agriculture. So, you know, you could have an eligible 10-acre lot, like I was saying with those 37, but it's not eligible because it's all in the woods. It's not productive farm ground. So,
But you could still preserve with the woods, it would just be a lower valuation.
it just wouldn't be that program.
Yeah.
We'd go after another
Yeah.
program. So, you know, there's just different funding resources depending on what the ground is used for. But in tonight, what we're talking about is primarily the agricultural preservation program, which is the August deadline of the privatization.
What is the average right now for the,
Countywide?
yeah,
Countywide is about 55.
that's 10% if you want to.
Say again?
Is that 55 and that's for, some people got to be 10% donation.
Yeah, so it's, so the average is about $5,500 an acre, and a 10% donation of that would be, you know, $550, or $5,000 an acre.
Because I was talking with him a month ago, I kind of forgot about this problem. And he said, well, give me a guide, go around, sit down. Probably do it.
Yeah, we can do that.
So August deadline is only for the agricultural program.
Yeah, we can go through all the alphabets you want. I mean, the PPGP is in February 28th, the DCNRC 2P2 is usually April 28th. I mean, this is why I sit at the table. And the other thing, and this is what's, I'm free. I have a grant program that allows me to do this for landowners. So, I'm not charging the township, I'm not charging the landowner. This is what I do for a living, this is what I love to do. And it's, again, it's just analyzing the opportunity, but it's voluntary and it's up to the landowner at the end of the day. And even when all the numbers are on the table, it's still up to the landowner when they exercise to choose to move forward.
Just like John was out for me, I was quite satisfied. Guess I was a bit greedy, I don't know, then he pulled something else. I don't even know where he got it. You found another 18,000 somewhere to.
I sold my hair.
Where's behind it?
Should have won.
And again, it for so many people, it's the biggest asset in your portfolio that you want to be serious about it, and you want to do your homework, and you want to make sure it's the right deal, because again, it's great for the community, it's great for agriculture, it can be great for nature. There's all sorts of grades, but there's no going back. So you want to have a clear eye, you want to do your homework, you want to have good assistance, and look at it from every angle.
But if you wanted to sell your property, it would have to be as is, like, you couldn't build any additional structures on it.
It all depends. And again, that's why each project's different. In the agricultural preservation program, you get a one bio-right floating house right. In the PPGP, they don't want any. There's just, again, this is where you sit at the kitchen table and hear the story of what the family's future is on the farm and what their vision is for it. And then you try to marry that vision with the land and the programs that are out there and the township's vision, and when it all comes together, you get preservation.
There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of discussion, a lot of variables.
You need to get a video of him describing. Seriously, you need to put that on the.
Oh, he's an expert.
Yeah, only if I can use your hair.
Well, we just need to visit our neighbors and give them free tickets to have the John Goodall show right in their living room.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Hey, John, I got a question for you now concerning my brother's property. There's another property above him, East Stole Street. He has 10 acres that he would preserve it if he could.
Yes, it does.
Now, I think some of my brother's thing is this way, he considers it government money.
Yeah.
Now, your program, could you find a program that would be 100%, and I wouldn't say 100%, probably not, but it's
You know what, if I am given that task, it makes the challenge harder, but it's worth it, because of that, I know that farm, it is an important area.
That's right, I'd hate to see houses in there.
I think it's worth having the task. If that's the hurdle he gives me, and he says, look, I'll do this, but I don't want any of that, any government money, it's all gotta be nonprofit or other sources. Then I would do the appraisal, see what the values are, and then go to the nonprofits and put it to the table and say, what say ye? It may turn out where he'll have to give a bit more of a donation, but if that's what it takes for him to be satisfied, then that would be the condition to make it so.
I wouldn't mind throwing something at him again. He was looking at another property, so he might bite a little bit, I'm not sure.
Well, that's the glory of this, is that 1031 exchange, where you can tease away that value and then pay no capital gains as long as you're using it to purchase land. And it's like of like, I can't imagine it would be for what he's doing.
Well, what would happen if you would pay 100%? I wouldn't have to go with the money, would it?
So, John, are you still there? John McHugh? I saw him join a while ago, and then I realized that he wasn't actually in the call. He was just stuck in the waiting room. So maybe he doesn't even still be there anymore. It was like an hour ago.
I apologize. I talked
It's a good thing I don't work with technology for a living.
No,
I think
those
it's
would be
a-
very good explanations, thank you.
Yeah. So we have been making outreach efforts, thanks to some help from Scott back there. We got a blurb in the Community Courier a few weeks back. I made up these little flyers, like a one-pager that tries to cover the high-level stuff about the land preservation program. I stuck a couple of these up in the hardware store and in the grocery store up in town. I've also handed a couple of them out. I've been visiting a couple different farms. There was an auction back in March where they were selling off a couple plots up along Brandmore Road in the most southeast corner. So I left off some materials for the auctioneer, who happily agreed to pass them along to the landowner. Yeah, as I said, I kind of started at the eastern edge of the township, and I've been visiting a couple different farms. I visited Leon Saltz's there on Chestnut Tree Road, and the Rays there at Greason Road. And trying to slowly make my way through. Some people I know, some people I don't. But so far, I've got a pretty good reception. One time I stopped in and there wasn't anybody home, or nobody came to the door. So I just kind of folded up a letter. Also have kind of a letter that's a little bit more personal and one-on-one. And on the back of this one, it's got how to get in touch with John Goodall, how to get in touch with Jeff Shellington at Chester County, how to contact me directly. There's lots of different contacts that people can reach out to. Whoever somebody might feel most comfortable with, feel free to reach out to follow up. And when I go to, sure, yeah, you can, yep. Many copies. Yeah, if anybody would like a copy, or if you have got an email, I can email them out as well.
The last individual I know you went to, I know they were out of town, so they should be coming back soon.
Okay. Okay. Nice. I feel better about nobody answering the door.
No, they weren't ignoring you, they were away.
All right, yeah. Nobody shot at me, so I figured it was a win.
Yeah.
Well, some people just don't like to be bothered at home, so when it's somebody I don't know, there's always a lot of apprehension
Yeah.
about going up, introducing myself. But, yeah, I mean, usually each visit is only like 5 minutes, or at most, I was gonna show up, it's like, hey, by the way, this is an awesome farm. I'd love to see it stay how it is. I think it's awesome. And we've got these resources to help you if you're interested in preserving it. You would get money out of the deal. You keep the farm. Everything you're doing with the farm now, you can keep doing with the farm. As long as it's already legal. You just get some money out of the deal, and your farm stays as a farm forever, which is an awesome thing for all of your neighbors, because they can count on it staying pretty, and they can count on it not becoming a sea of houses, driving up our taxes and sewer bills and everything else.
Township building
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we haven't even paid off this one yet. Let's not even talk about that. We're building another township building.
But that stuff is like that, according to my neighbor, can think. I had a neighbor, John Lewis, that I'm talking about. He said, he doesn't want anything to do with the program. A couple of years there, he preserved his farm like what
Yep.
I don't know what John said to him or what happened.
When it was even in 319 when I started with it.
He told me, I'm not anti-government, but I don't want anything to do with those programs. So I figured, okay, goodbye. Somehow it got him thinking that.
The government is just a vehicle for neighbors helping each other in this case. That's how I look at it.
Now the farm farmed sold again just recently, and I was glad it was preserved. I mean, it was state farming anyhow, but it still felt like a safety net knowing that it's preserved, that won't be some developer coming in there and building houses with it. So,
Right there at the curb on 10, that old farm, yeah, very cool, yeah, okay.
You know, one of the things that happened, you remember we had that big yellow washer, and he had sold some of those lots up there, and why, maybe they weren't, you know, put in too well, so all that water just came running onto his farm, and I mean, it just, he lost so much of his pasture. He never wanted to see another house grow, and he was the one who grew.
he got some motorcycles on his land too, that ticked him off a little bit too, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I remember seeing that fence move. I watched somebody one day, like somebody, icy night, passed me up on that hill, came down to his curb. Just didn't quite hit the fence, but it was close.
Shane Jones.
So,
$2,240,000, 2.2.
are you there, Joe?
Whatever the property is.
So anyway,
Thank you.
yeah, I'll continue
You know, of course, you're.
visiting, visiting renters across the business area.
What's that for?
One that, Corinne.
Yeah. You might see a house back.
Catches the eye.
I got a coupon for buying stuff at UPS store. Do a snazzier version of this with a map on it or something. All right, which kind of brings us back to open forum, which we pretty much never left. I haven't heard anything from John McHugh. He's still on mute.
He's
I'm not sure if he's there.
Sure.
There? Oh, there you go. Okay. Hey, John. Yeah, I'm sorry about your time in the waiting room there. I saw you in this thing kind of went ding dong and said John McHugh's here. I said, okay, great. And then I never looked at the screen again for like an hour. And then I looked up again and said you're in the waiting room. So I apologize for that. But now that you're here, is there anything you want to mention or add?
I think you did a very good job covering what is and what is. Thank you to you and the committee for keeping us up to date.
Well, thanks for your support. And Scott's here tonight too, so you can catch the rerun on YouTube.
Will do. Make sure you give them a like.
Yep, always do. All right, anything else? Anybody else?
Are we meeting in August now, or?
Good point. There was a talk about moving July to August, and I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely sure I watched one of those August weeks. That puts us at August 22nd. When I'm actually not here. Anybody else not here August 22nd? Although, I could just join by Zoom, so.
Yeah, that's what it's there for, because I mean, we feel like people, applications and things, and if you're going to down or hotel room, something like that, that works.
Shane, that's the fourth Tuesday.
It's the 4th? That is the 4th. Oh. Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
That'd be the third.
Okay, yeah, it'd actually be the 15th. Oh, you know, yeah. I'll
Great day.
Yeah, I'll have to bring cake. But, at least cupcakes. So, I guess we have a motion to reschedule our July meeting to 2023. Anybody want to give a first on that?
Anybody to second that?
I'll second.
That's August 15th, right?
August, yeah, Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, 7 PM, right here. All in favor, say aye. Yep, yeah, I'll get these, I now have access to the new minute and agenda system. I can go in there and make edits and can send this to her pretty quickly. So she doesn't have to read it.
The applications are due in August, is that like August 30th?
It's the first, what is it, the first Monday in August. So I don't know I don't think they published the first day yet, on that date, but that's usually the time.
All right, that gets us right up to adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
All right, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And that concludes April's Land Preservation Committee meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Val and John.